Hello, everybody. Welcome to our webinar for this month. Very excited to present this information to you. As always, I'm Dr. Bill Davis from UCM Practice Growth Systems, and I am excited to chat with all of you today, go through this important information for you if you are in this practice growth stage. This is going to be an awesome webinar. So today we're going to be talking about 7 traps to avoid when adding a second associate to your upper cervical practice. And Doc, I know that if you're in this webinar, you already have established a lot of things. You've had the ability to really bring your practice to a level of success that gives you the ability to help a lot of people in your community, but you're thinking about what's next, right? You're thinking about, how can I keep growing? How can I keep helping more and more people? How can I engage more people in my community so that they know about upper cervical chiropractic, so that they can get the help that they need? And so you're thinking about, what can I do to be successful with a 3-doctor practice? And that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. So today I'm going to save you tons of time and money. I'm going to, what I've seen in the past 10 years is we've helped dozens of upper cervical practices hire multiple associates. And I know what works. I know what doesn't work. I've seen it over and over. We've literally written a book on upper cervical practice success twice. We have 2 editions of it. We've done over 200 podcasts with the top upper cervical doctors in this profession, and we've worked with them, in our services over the years. And so I've learned over and over, and also I've built a practice myself. I've built a very successful business after that practice. And so if you're ready to build a 3-doctor practice, we got you covered. We know the answers to the questions. We know what works and what doesn't. And so let's go ahead and get started. And so if you're and also if you're on Facebook, looks like we're having some issues with live stream. So you can join us on one of our other platforms. We're live on YouTube right now. If you're having any issues seeing the live stream, let's get started with the topics we're going to go through today. And so just to remind you, we've identified these practice growth stages, these stages that not every upper cervical practice goes through all of them, but where you are in practice is a particular stage. So for instance, every upper cervical practice obviously starts and goes into practice growth stage 1, which is growing to $20,000 a month in average collections with a full-time CA. Everyone at least gets into the stage 1, and then everyone gets into the last stage, which transition out of practice. But different practices will go through different stages. And in this case, today, we're going to be focusing on practice growth stage 3, where you're growing from 1 associate to 2 associates, right? So practice growth stage 3 is the focus of today's webinar. And so that's where you are. That's good. You're in the right place. And so typically you're somewhere in the range of $60,000 to $100,000 per month in average collections, maybe a little bit below that, depending on where what you're thinking and how quickly you're growing. But yeah, we'll talk more specifically about finances and whatnot later, as far as what is important to look at. But just to kind of give you a global perspective, there are these different growth stages. This is what we love to do, is help doctors work through these stages and grow through these stages. So if you've got big plans in mind, if you want to see your practice go into practice growth stage 4 and 5 and 6, we would love to talk with you more about that and help you with that. That's what we do all day long. And so, but specifically in today's webinar, what you're going to learn is how to develop effective associate recruitment strategies to consistently generate quality candidates. We're going to talk about how to make sure that you actually need another associate, right? Instead of just hiring another CA or office manager, depending on where you are in practice. We're going to talk about the 3-doctor model and how to choose the right one for your practice, your personality blend, and culture. There's different types of 3-doctor models in upper cervical practice. We're also going to determine, help you determine if you're collecting enough each month to afford a second associate, right? Is it the right time financially? We're going to talk about how to set expectations with clearly defined results, metrics, and bonuses, KRAs, KPIs, things like that. We're going to talk about how to develop systems that don't depend on your personality to succeed. Really, really important. We're going to talk about what you need to do to make sure you have enough new patients to fill all 3 of your schedules, how to make sure your overhead isn't creeping out of control. This is a big one. As you bring on another high-paid team member, you got to make sure your overhead is in the right place so that you don't strangle the practice of all its cash. We'll also talk about how to make sure you're developing a training system for your associates and all your team members to thrive, and what you need to focus on right now to grow to the next practice growth stage, and really a whole bunch more. So let's get started. So let's talk about those 7 traps. Let's put them out there right now so everybody knows what they are. The 7 traps to avoid when adding a second associate to your practice are, number 1, you're not ready, right? We're going to talk about readiness. 2 is your overhead is out of control. 3 is your new patient systems are not producing enough for 3 doctors. 4 is you have an inadequate training system in order to effectively train another associate. Number 5 is you've waited too long. We'll talk about that one specifically later. Number 6 is not considering personalities and culture. And number 7 is just choosing the wrong model for your specific upper cervical practice. So let's go into this. If there's anybody out there that is having a hard time seeing, I'm getting some comments that you're not seeing or hearing anything, just a black screen with circle spinning. Is if anyone else is noticing that, if they're having problems with their with seeing this, please comment in the comments for me, so that I know that if we're having issues with technical issues. Okay, let me just see. Let me just try this real quick and see if we can get this, if we're having issues. Anybody else having issues seeing me, hearing me, please let me know. Okay, I'm not getting any comments, so I'm going to keep going. Hopefully we are, hopefully that was just one person having an issue and everybody else can see and hear me. Okay, plays on my phone, not on my computer. Interesting. Okay, well, if everybody else is hearing me and I'm going to keep going. So let's get right into trap number 1, choosing the right type of team member for your specific practice situation, systems, and capacity. So looking at this trap. So basically you want to look at 3 different options when you get to this point in practice, right? So you already, you're in practice, you got an associate, you're rocking and rolling when it comes to that kind of stuff. But now it's like, okay, how do we keep growing? How do we go from where we are to where we want to go next? And there's 3 different paths to get there. Depending on where you are in practice, you may just need to hire another CA, right? So if you can figure out how to change up your systems, streamline some of the things that you're doing with patient flow and whatnot, you may just be able to add a CA, another CA, in order to keep growing. Or another option would be to add an office manager, right? So this is someone who has a little bit more experience, has more skills and capabilities. They can take on some of that managerial perspectives, right? System building, training, and that type of thing. So this may be what you actually need is an office manager rather than an associate doctor. And then the last option, obviously, is to add that second associate. And so what I always encourage doctors to do is go through these steps first. Like if you can try the chiropractic assistant you can add another CA and keep growing, then do that first. If you can add an office manager and keep growing, then do that first. A second associate should be basically your last resort, or the thing that you know you need in order to keep growing. But if you have other options, use them, because again, you're going to be a high paid team member, and so you want to make sure that it's absolutely necessary for your practice. If you're not sure about this, if it's, you're in a specific situation, you have questions about it, I highly recommend scheduling a free practice strategy session with us. We can talk through these specific issues with your practice. We can talk about where you are in practice, if it makes sense to, bring on a CA or office manager or an associate. We love to have those kind of conversations. You can go over to uppercervicalmarketing.com and grab a free strategy session there. So trap number one is making sure you're choosing the right type of team member. Right? If you choose the wrong type of team member, it can come back to bite you. It can make it so it's not an effective experience for you. So make sure that you actually need an associate doctor before you hire that second one. Trap number two is your overhead is out of control. So what we recommend is that you're collecting at least $70,000 per month with a 50% overhead or less before you add a second associate, right? So again, it goes back to that first trap. If this is not where you are, if you're not at least $70,000 per month with a 50% overhead, then adding a CA, adding an office manager, something like that might be what you need in order to keep growing and getting to this type of practice dynamic. And so collecting at least $70,000 per month consistently, right? So that means averaging $70,000 per month in collections or more for 6 consecutive months before considering adding a second associate, right? So if you're at 60 and you're consistently at 60, or you're 60, 70, 65, 75, 55, you're kind of all over the place. You want to be 70,000 a month. You want to have that type of stability in the practice financially with a 50% overhead consistently before you start to consider this. And if you're in a high overhead area, then you may need your practice to grow more to bring on an associate, right? So if you're in, Southern California, and you're in New York City, if you're in some place like that where you have high rents and those types of things, you want to make sure that your overhead is not out of control before bringing on another high paid team member. You also want to make sure that you have enough margin, right? So you got to have enough margin to pay yourself, your taxes, build an emergency fund, be debt free, is what we recommend, and reinvest in the business, right? So you want to have all the margin to be able to do those things. And that's why the 50% overhead is a really good mark to look at. If you're not there, then continuing to increase your revenue, keeping your expenses under control so that that overhead can be in a better position. And so, as I mentioned, you may need to add different support staff in order to increase your collections. You also may need to work on your systems, which we can talk about more in a minute. So what is overhead? Overhead is everything that is necessary to run your business, right? Payroll, rent, utilities, marketing, equipment, supplies, insurance, consulting, basically all expenses, right, is your overhead. And so you want to make sure that collecting at least $70,000 per month with 50% overhead or less. That is trap number two. Trap number three, inadequate new patient generating and conversion systems, right? So making sure that you have solid internal, external, digital new patient generating strategies to fill the schedules of 3 doctors, right? You got to make sure that you have enough coming in, enough new patients coming in that your schedules are going to be full. A well-trained team, right? You want to have a team that is consistently trained, that you're having effective meetings with, that you're continually pouring into so that they're getting better and better at working with new patients and existing patients. Clearly defined systems for the entire new patient journey and existing patient journey, right? You want to have all of that laid out clearly and effectively. And so let's look at each of these. So let's start with marketing. So when it comes to marketing, you want to have 3 types of marketing programs that are consistently producing new patients for your practice if you want to have a 3-doctor practice, right? You got to have a very strong digital strategy, right? You want to make sure that you're getting consistent new patients from the internet, right? Are they finding you online? Are you everywhere, right? Do you have an effective website? Do you have effective social media presence? And one of the most effective ways to do that is to make sure that you're recording videos, right? Our clients, we recommend videos every single month. We recommend doctor videos, video testimonials, and we put them everywhere for our clients, right? We get them out there for them: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and more. This will help you tremendously as your practice grows and you can invest in digital marketing, right? So as you continue to grow your practice, your digital presence should continue to grow with it, right? I have clients that have been with me for 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, 10 years even, and their digital footprint is huge now, right? Because they've been consistently investing in digital, their digital presence, and that allows them to consistently just get new patients coming in all the time just because of their presence online, and obviously the strategies that we're helping them with. Secondly is your internal marketing strategy. And really what the most effective internal marketing, we found over the years of doing our upper cervical practice survey, is patient education, right? Over and over and over, it's the #1 way that people are generating new patients internally. And that's what we found as well. And a patient education process should lead to referrals, right? And so it starts with your new patient phone call. And this applies to all new patient opportunities, but the new patient phone call should be something that is regularly trained on, is recorded, so that people can actually that you have an opportunity to hear it as a clinic director. Every one of our clients, that's part of our system, part of our dashboard, is every new patient phone call is recorded, and you can listen back to it for training purposes. You can work with your team on how are they handling, objections? How are they handling people who are calling in and, just wanting to, get their neck popped and never see you again, right? How do they handle all these different situations? And so new patient phone call is very, very important. And that's the start of a patient education process. And then from there, in that consultation, exam, imaging, report, are you walking them through what you're doing as an upper cervical doctor and why it's so important and how you are unique as a specialist? Is that part of what you're all about? And then are you giving them a care plan? Are you showing them a plan of care of how to go from where they are to where they need to go? And are you doing progress exams, right? Are you showing them the progress that they made so far and how they're moving through the different phases of of care and helping them to establish the results they're looking for? And all of this is part of that patient education system. And so if you have a really solid patient education system that's consistently generating referrals now, then that obviously is what you need in order to continue to build on, in order to have a 3rd doctor in the practice. So along with digital and internal marketing, the last thing here is making sure you have a strong external marketing plan and presence. And so the thing that we've, again, found that's the most effective consistently for upper cervical practices is building a health practitioner referral network. And this is, a study group or provider nights, making sure that you are consistently engaging with your community and building your health practitioner referral network. If you don't have this happening within your practice, if you're going to add a 3rd doctor, I highly recommend building it, starting to build it now even. And we have a great blog on this. If you take a picture of that, you can see, or just go to that blog post, uppercervicalmarketing.com blog, health practitioner referral network, or you just can probably Google that and find it too if you don't want to write down that long link. But that is a blog that really walks you through exactly what we recommend for building a health practitioner referral network. And so those are 3 things that we recommend every doctor in practice growth stage 3 is doing. 1 is strong patient education system. 2 is strong digital marketing presence. And number 3 is a strong health practitioner referral network. If you have those 3 in place, then most likely you're going to have enough new patients coming in where you can bring on that 3rd doctor. And also you can just turn those up, right? You can do more of those in order to get more new patients. Another part of this is making sure you have those clearly defined systems, right? We talked a little bit about that before, but just making sure that you have checklists, milestones, scripts for the entire new patient journey, existing patient journey, right? You want to make sure that it doesn't rely on your personality in order for it to work, right? Like your system has to not just rely on you, because every doctor is going to be different. So your systems have to be documented. And you need to consistently update those processes, right? You find a better way of doing something, you update it, make sure it's in there. And then you use those systems in your weekly trainings, right? Every practice at this level, practice growth stage 3, should be doing weekly trainings with their team. Highly recommend that. Working with your team every week on, all aspects of their practice. And do you use your systems to hold your team accountable to standards? As I mentioned earlier, for instance, making sure that your new patient phone calls are recorded, because if not, you have no idea what's actually happening on those new patient phone calls and how many of them are actually not being handled the way you would like. So here's one, here's a free resource that's really helpful for you if you're not sure about your new patient phone call. Recommend going over to the website, uppercirclemarketing.com, go to resources, practice growth tools, or just go to that link right there. Grab our new patient phone call checklist. This is a really useful resource for helping you to effectively train your team. And really, this is just something that they can print out, have right at the front desk, walks them through exactly how we recommend handling new patient phone calls with our clients. And so great resource for you. You can grab it for free over at uppercirclemarketing.com. So as I mentioned before, just developing systems that don't depend on your personality for success. So regardless of your personality, in many ways, your practice is a reflection of you, right? So when you hire associates, they're not going to have the same personality as you. So that's why it's crucial. You got to have those milestones, checklist, scripts for every aspect of the new patient journey and existing patient journey that you can train your new associates on those systems, so they don't just have to be like you, right? The better you can define the milestones that need to be reached during each aspect of a system, the better someone else will be able to communicate effectively with their own personality, right? So that's huge. Making sure that your systems are really dialed in is a big part of making sure that this is going to work for your practice. So trap number 3 is you have inadequate new patient generating and conversion systems. So that's everything we just talked about. Are you getting enough new patients in the door, or can you get enough? Do you have enough? Do you have a plan in place to get enough new patients in the door? Do you have the systems to handle those new patients? And are you training on those systems effectively? Again, if you need help with this, we would love to help you. We'd love helping doctors with our practice growth sessions, work through some of these issues. Practice growth sessions are a no commitment time where you work with one of our coaches on specific things within the practice, work on building a training system, work on building a specific process, right? Work on documenting your processes, work on your new patient phone call, different things you can work on during our practice growth sessions. So if you grab a free practice strategy session, we can talk more about that. Trap number 4, inadequate training system. So we started talking a little bit about training in the trap number 3, but this is a deeper dive into training, because training is crucial. So obviously you gotta have training for your entire team. But if your training system is not good and you bring an associate into another associate into your system, then you're going to set them up for failure. And so you want to have a commitment to training for all team members. As I mentioned, weekly trainings, high degree of transparency and accountability, including job scorecards. And so let's talk more about that. So what does a well-trained team look like, right? A well-trained team is a team that is doing weekly team trainings with role playing and feedback. Can you say yes to that? Is that something that you're doing? Are you doing that with your team? If you're not doing that, then you may want to wait on hiring another associate. You got to get this really dialed in order for this to work. Do you have a system to track and record your new patient phone calls? This is really important because if you have 3 doctors, you don't want any of those new patients that are calling your practice to fall through the cracks, right? You want to make sure that every single one of them, every one of those new patient opportunities is converted at a high level, right? The leads that we get for our clients, if they're not converting 80% of those leads into an appointment, we're concerned. We're like, what's going on? We need to look, we need to listen to these phone calls and figure out exactly what's happening. If you don't even know how many of your new patient phone calls are becoming appointments, then again, you got to have a system to track that so that you can, convert a higher percentage of those new patients in order to fill the schedules of 3 doctors. Do you have a culture of accountability and transparency, right? Are your CAs, do they embrace that? Do they embrace accountability, transparency? Are they excited to get better at what they do? If not, then it's going to be difficult to continue to grow. And do you have weekly team meetings that are actually effective, right? So we have another resource on the website, a meeting resource kit that can help you build really good weekly, what we call level 10 meetings, staff meetings that are actually effective team meetings. So making sure that you're doing these types of things is a big part of making sure you have a well-trained team. And so having job scorecards for all team members is crucial. We have a great resource for you over at the website. You can get it in Practice Growth Tools. So uppercirclemarketing.com, click on resources, click on Practice Growth Tools. You can find this job scorecard there. And what we recommend is every one of your team members should have this, right? So should have a laid out, what are their key results areas, their KRAs, what are their key performance indicators, their KPIs, and how do you measure that? And what do are you looking at that every month to make sure that they're hitting the target for their position? And so that's another big part of this is you got to get these job scorecards dialed in for all your existing team members so that when you bring on another associate, they come into a system that's really humming. So trap number 4 was inadequate training system, right? You got to make sure that you have a commitment to training for all your team members, a high degree of transparency and accountability, including job scorecards. This is trap number 4. So again, if you need help with this, building that training system, we're here to help you. uppercirclemarketing.com, grab your free practice strategy session. Trap number 5, waiting too long. So this is an interesting one because it's a trap in the sense that if you wait too long and you attempt to do it at the wrong time, then your practice can actually break down as you've gotten to that point, right? So your practice will begin to break down at about 100,000 per month if you don't add a 3rd doc. Now, the only exception to this is if you are charging a very high amount, right? So if your per visit price, office visit average is $125, $135 a visit. Maybe your care plan is $4,000 or $5,000. If you have a really high, income from each individual patient, then this, you may be able to go longer with a practice. But in general, if you don't add a 3rd doctor at around $100,000 per month, your practice is going to break down. It's going to start going backwards rather than continuing to grow. So you want to plan ahead, right, with your associate recruitment strategies to keep your practice growing. And so even if you're at 80 or 90 right now, you got to be thinking, man, I got to get a 3rd doc in here pretty quick in order to get this practice to keep growing. So as I mentioned, a lot of this comes down to making sure we have effective associate recruitment strategies. You want to consistently generate quality candidates, right? So here's some ways that we found that are very effective for consistently generating candidates, because that's what you want. You want even when you don't have a position, you want to always be talking to candidates. You want to be talking to students, talking to interns, talking to people, having connections. So speaking on chiropractic colleges campuses, right? So if you're anywhere near any chiropractic college, I would encourage you to speak on the campus. So this, and you can even do this even if you're not close via Zoom, right? I've done that before. I've spoke to different clubs and whatnot via Zoom. It's another way to get connected with, obviously, with students, not just upper cervical clubs either. Speak on anything. Like if they have a business club, speak there. If they have a, whatever club, a philosophy club, speak at it. Whatever it is, get on the campus, get connected with students. And another thing is making sure that you are a preceptor, right? So if you are either you're close to a practice, or a school, or even if you're not, get approved to be a preceptor. So you always have interns and students in your practice. Another way of finding some non-traditional associate candidates is through this website, kairosconnect.com. This is something that I've discovered in the past few years from some of our clients who have used this website to really get connected with some people who you wouldn't think of. Most of the time when you think of, adding an associate, you think of a student usually, right? Someone coming out of school. But sometimes the best associates are chiropractors who've been in practice for a while, right? Maybe someone has been in practice for 10 years and their practice just isn't going great. And that, they're not really enjoying owning their own practice. And they'd rather work in an effective system like yours and, be an associate. And so that person can be a great associate to come in with some already experience of working with patients. And so a good way to connect with those non-traditional candidates is kairosconnect.com. Another place is just school job boards, Technique job boards, Indeed, posting an ad there, Technique job fairs, whatever it is, lots of different ways that you can get connected. You want to make sure you're creative with this, finding ways to stand out, whether it's through videos or through, making sure your ad copy is good for the places that you're posting. But look for candidates, both traditional, interns, students, those types of things, but also non-traditional candidates who don't even practice upper cervical, right? Sometimes great associates are people who were practicing full spine. They're not really enjoying their practice. They want to try something completely new, and you can bring them into your practice as a little bit more seasoned associate. Teach them upper cervical, and they can be an incredible associate. I've seen that many times with doctors who they've brought in, an associate even older than them, and they have been incredible associates for them for a long time. So that's trap number 5 is waiting too long. Your practice will begin to break down about $100,000 per month if you don't add a third doc. So you want to plan ahead with your associate recruitment strategies to keep the practice growing, right? Get out there, start getting connected with people. Trap number 6, consider personality and culture, right? So when bringing in a third doc, you want to make sure that they fit well with the existing doctors and team members, right? So some of the best ways to do that is using personality tests, right? Through your interview process and through your screening process. We'll talk about 2 types of these. There's a lot of different ones out there, a lot of different ways that you can assess people's, personalities and how best they're going to mesh with you and mesh with your team. But here's 2 ways that I've found to be pretty effective. And one is the DISC assessment. All right, so DISC is an acronym, stands for decisive, interactive, stabilizing, cautious. There's other words that also have DISC in them, but those are the basics. And so, what you're looking for with this is, number 1 is, do you know your personality profile type? And none of these tests are perfect, right? They're not going to perfectly nail it down when it comes to your personality, but it's going to give you a general idea of how you think and how you work and whatnot. And so they're useful. And so, for instance, if you're a high D like I am, then you want to be thinking through, okay, what are the other team members on my team, right? Do I have some I's? Do I have an S? Do I have a C? Do I have these other personality types? Because a nice blend like that can be really effective in a team environment, a working environment. And so you want to see, what's your personality type? What's your current associate? What are all your team members, office managers, CAs, and so forth? And then have candidates take the DISC profile test so that you know what they are, right? So then you can start to figure out, okay, would this person fit well with the rest of us when it comes to their personality? That's going to be a key piece to that. Another part of that is the 6 Types of Working Genius. This is a book I recommend. It's by Patrick Lencioni. 6 Types of Working Genius gives you an understanding of basically how work is done, and that there's 6 types of working genius, right? So everybody kind of works in a different way. Different people have more of one than the other. And so understanding the working geniuses, understanding what yours is, your team is, again, can help you to make sure you're fitting this new doctor in a way that's going to help the whole team to work better together. So those are the 6 types of working genius: the genius of wonder, the natural gift of pondering the past possibility of greater potential, opportunity in a given situation, the genius of invention, the natural gift of creating original and novel ideas and solutions, the genius of discernment, natural gift of intuitively and instinctively evaluating ideas and situations, genius of galvanizing, natural gift of rallying, inspiring, and organizing others to take action, genius of enablement, the natural gift of providing encouragement, assistance for an idea or project, genius of tenacity, natural gift of pushing projects or tasks to completion to achieve results. So ideally, within your team, as you are, if you're right now a 2-doctor practice with some CAs and office manager or whatever, you want to have you really want to have all the geniuses, right? Ideally, you want to have geniuses within each of these so that you can do work most effectively together. So trap number 6 is making sure that you're considering your personality and your culture, and really getting that, using some of these tools to assess it. Trap number 7, choosing the right model. And just a reminder on this: if you don't have the book Upper Cervical Practice Mastery, Learn Success Secrets of the World's Top Upper Cervical Doctors, we released the 2nd edition earlier this year. Highly recommend picking up this book. You can actually get a free digital copy at our website, uppercervicalmarketing.com. If not, please, you can grab it on Amazon or whatever you want. But yeah, if you go over to Amazon or to our website, you can get a free copy of the book, digital copy of it. So last trap here, trap number 7, choosing the right model, right? So there's 2 main models of 3-doctor practices: senior associate with a junior associate model, and a long-term associate with a short-term associate model. Okay, so we'll talk about each of these, what may be best for your practice. So the senior associate, junior associate model, typically the way it works is you're going to have a 2 to 3 year program for your associates, right? So you're 12 to 18 months into the program, the junior associate will become the senior associate and train the new junior associate, right? So a lot of practices use this. This is something that has been taught for many years in different, practice management companies and whatnot. The senior associate, junior associate model, right? 2 to 3 year program, 12 to 18 months into it, the associate who started as a junior associate becomes the senior associate, and then they begin to train the new junior associate, right? So if you're right now in a situation where you've had let's say you're in a 2-doctor practice, you have an associate who's been with you for 2 years. If you hired a new associate, then if you use this model, your existing associate would become the senior associate. The new associate would become the junior associate. You would primarily give the responsibility of training the junior associate to the senior associate, right? You, of course, still would work with both of them. You would still do things like that, but primarily the senior associate will work with the junior associate to help them to grow to a senior associate. This works best for practices that are training centers, right? if you're going to focus on attracting candidates who are looking to eventually have their own practices, then this is a really good model, right? Because what you're doing is you're bringing someone in almost like a residency. They're coming into a system where you can train them up on patient management, practice management, their technique, all the things that they kind of need in order to be successful as an upper cervical doctor, and then release them out to their own practice, right? So this is a training center model that can be very effective. So if this is what you want, if you want to, if you want this type of a practice where you're consistently bringing on new associates, you're consistently training them up, and bringing them to that senior level, they train the junior, and then the senior goes off, and then the junior becomes the senior, and so forth, then that is the model for you. The second type of model that I've seen work well as well is a long-term associate with a short-term associate, right? So some doctors were made to be associates and they make a career of it, right? I've seen doctors who have had the same associate for 15 years, 10, 15 years, right? So if you currently have a long-term associate, right, I would consider a long-term associate anywhere over maybe 3 to 5 years. If they're at least they've been with you that long, then it may be the best thing for you to do is to bring a short-term associate into that system. Short-term associate, again, would be someone who is looking to start their own practice. A majority of doctors out there do want to start their own practices, and so majority of students, I would say. So, bringing someone in like that, where again, your long-term associate is primarily focused on training the short-term associate and then launching them out on their own, can be another effective way to do it. You're consistently still recruiting, new associates to be added in, but it's primarily that long-term associate is training the short-term associate so that they can then go on from there. So there's your two models. You got to find what's best for you and your practice, what you want as a practice owner, what is really, what is most interesting to you. The other, the third option would be the two long-term associates. That's going to be, it may be a little bit more difficult to find, but you could find, for instance, two associates who want to be with you long-term. And that would be a third model that you could look into is, having two associates who are just going to be with you for, for many, many years. So make sure that you think through that. You start to figure that out even now. And if you need help with this, if you don't know what you want to do with when it comes to your associates, adding that third doctor into the practice, anything we've talked about today, any of these traps, go over to uppercervicalmarketing.com, click on Practice Growth Stage 3, get a strategy session with us, get started with that. Help. We want to help you grow. We want to help you continue to grow, help more people in your communities, and really continue to take upper cervical to the world. So thank you so much for being here today, Doc. I appreciate every single one of you. And as we always say, go team upper cervical.